By popular demand, defense and kicker rankings. Starting in the S tier with defense here, we are going to put the New England Patriots playing the New York Jets. That game is going to be an absolute freaking rock fight. I mean, you're starting the Patriots defense pretty much every week regardless because it's a Bill Belichick defense, even though the Dolphins actually had a fairly good game against them last week. The New England defense held Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa to 19 and 24 points respectively. Those are two of the highest scoring fantasy quarterbacks in the entire league, and that's what Bill Belichick was able to scheme up against those two offenses. This week, they're going to be going up against a huge future Hall of Bust quarterback, Zach Wilson. Hall of Bust. That's really clever by our video prep guy, Simon. That's great. We're going to put New England up here at first.
Yeah, for sure. Next team in the S tier, you're going to see this often, is going to be the San Francisco 49ers. And they only let up 30 points total in their first two games. That's pretty encouraging. That's really solid. Obviously, the Rams was a tougher game. Any division rival is going to be really tough. And even when they're depleted and don't have Cooper Kupp, apparently if you have Puka Nacua, you're going to be just fine because he'll get 20 targets a game at least. As much as we like Daniel Jones in fantasy, who that's who San Fran's playing this Thursday, he's unlikely to lead Isaiah Hodgins and Matt Breida do a stunning performance in San Francisco. I mean, especially now with the word of Saquon Barkley being out, like this is absolutely deserving of San Francisco being in the S tier for sure. I think you're going to see a lot of ground and pound from the Giants trying to keep the ball away from San Fran and Christian McCaffrey. And it could be ugly, honestly, because Daniel Jones is the best running threat there. And I don't think you're going to be expecting much offensively for the Giants at all. And it's not like they're known for being safe with the ball either.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to put Dallas here next. Dallas honestly could be at the top of this list too. They have 55 points through 2 weeks. They're like the third highest scoring fantasy asset through 2 weeks, like second only to like Tyreek Hill. And I forget who the other, maybe Justin, I forget the other one. But I mean, they are scoring at an incredibly high clip right now. Through 2 weeks, they have 10 sacks. They have 4 forced fumbles. They have 5 interceptions, and they have a touchdown. Look, Arizona is rolling out Josh Dobbs and a JUCO O-line.
Yeah.
That's about all you need to know.
I mean, can I call an audible here and just put Dallas at 1 in the S tier?
So on the video, will you put Dallas at 1 for us? Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Dallas is the number 1 for me.
They absolutely should be.
Yeah.
At the top of the A tier. Please don't look at this video. Don't scroll through the end of the video and then comment and say, I saw this defense on these rankings and I couldn't take you seriously. Because last week,
Tampa Bay, why are they in here? Look at their matchup, guys. They are playing the Chicago Bears. Tampa Bay still has a semi-respectable defense. They do. Like, that's the one thing they're going to continue to do at least decently while they suck on offense. And given that they're going to be playing Justin Fields, how could you not rank them here? That's how it turned out last week.
That's how it turned out. Tampa Bay, S tier level defense. We were right. Let's go. And we got crapped on for it big time.
Because they're playing Justin Fields.
They're playing Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears. Kansas City going to be at the top of the A tier here purely because they're playing Chicago. I mean, if Chris Jones wasn't playing for Kansas City right now, we would still probably have him at the back end of the A tier because they're playing Chicago. Now you have Chris Jones back. What's that run game going to do for Chicago? That amazing, wonderful run game that still can't win them any games because Justin Fields can't pass in the fourth quarter. Like, this is more about how bad the Bears are. It really is. And even though the Chiefs do have a pretty solid defense, you cannot deny the fact that you have had now for 2 straight weeks top producing defenses going against the same offense. Like, at some point, we've got to admit that there's an issue with Chicago offensively. I mean, and we have to capitalize. A long time ago. We have to capitalize. I mean, if you're like if you don't know who to start defensively and you're just dropping and picking up every single week defensively, you can't go wrong with whoever's playing Chicago.
Yep.
Dead serious.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And they've got Chris Jones back, so that does help as well.
Yeah, I mean, they held the Jags to 9 points in week 2. That's really impressive.
It's not a bad defense.
In Jacksonville. No,
it's not
at all.
Defense. They're better with Chris Jones.
They're pretty good with Chris Jones, and their secondary is really not like their secondary matters against the Bears. But
all right, Cleveland also is going to be in this tier. They're playing the Tennessee Titans. Cleveland did obliterate Joe Burrow in week 1. They had 2 sacks and they had 142 yards allowed. Granted, the Baltimore Ravens defense also obliterated Joe Burrow, and it seems Joe Burrow is just asking to be obliterated at this point. Tannehill, 444 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions through 2 games.
Oof. And I'll say right off the bat here too, like, I don't care what Cleveland does against Pittsburgh. I legitimately don't. I don't care if they put 0 points on the board for fantasy. Like, this is a division rival game.
Yeah, they're going to
and they're going to Pittsburgh, even if they don't do well, which I expect them to do well. Like, this does not matter against Tennessee. Tennessee is not going to score a lot of points. They're not.
It's Tennessee.
Yeah. Top of the B tier here, we're going to have the Jets against New England. And if Aaron Rodgers were playing for the Jets right now, we would consistently have the Jets in at least the A tier, if not higher. Our issue is not with the Jets' skill, their talent, their ability to keep the game close and to keep the other team from scoring that many points. My issue is how long they're going to be on the field, because, I mean, that Jets offense isn't going to do crap. They're not. Dalvin Cook looks absolutely washed. Breece Hall just won't get the ball. And Garrett Wilson, even with his volume, there's only so much he can do. And he's kind of dependent on big plays at this point, which doesn't take much time off the clock, which in turn means that the Jets defense is just going to be on the field. They're going to be stuck there. And that ultimately means I either A, have to force a lot of turnovers, which is really tough to do consistently on a weekly basis. And B, you have to keep the other team from scoring a lot of points when you're on the field for a majority of the time. And going against an offense where Mac Jones has now thrown the ball over 40 times for 2 weeks in a row, I think there's a possibility that happens again. And it's really hard to keep that from being a knock on them defensively in fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they still will be in the B tier because they're a good defense.
They are a good defense. I do worry about them long term, though, because they're literally going to spend 3/4 of the game on the field, like you said.
They will.
Buffalo's going to be next. Buffalo's playing the Commanders. They've allowed 32 points in the year. They've had 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and 3 interceptions. They held both teams to under 300 yards. So obviously, Buffalo's defense has performed fairly well this year. They're going up against Sam Howell. They're going to have some weapons that they need to shut down in Terry and Dotson, even in Brian Robinson now, who has done fairly well from a fantasy perspective the last couple of weeks. If they take advantage of a young, unexperienced QB, they could outperform this prediction, honestly. So they do have high upside. So if you're streaming defenses and the Buffalo Bills are out there and you're shooting for upside, the Bills actually might be the upside pick this week.
Yeah. Then we're going to have Jacksonville at the end of this B tier, honestly, purely because they're playing Houston. I mean, you saw what the Colts did against Houston this week. They ended up as a top 10 defense, scoring 9 points with CJ Stroud throwing it 47 times. That's a lot of passing volume to still be a top 10 producing defense. And the Colts secondary sucks. Now you have an actual respectable secondary with a D-line, granted, that isn't as good as the Colts have, but I don't think it matters regardless. Jacksonville's going to own that game on both sides of the ball, and I don't think it's going to matter. Not to mention, they just held Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to 17 points once, and Travis Kelce was back healthy. So it could be a sneaky low-scoring game. Really, it could be. There's a potential that happens.
Yep. Moving down to the C tier, we're going to have the Miami Dolphins defense. They're playing Denver. They had a pretty weak first performance in week 1, but they bounced back against New England. They had 17 points allowed, 4 sacks, a forced fumble, and a recovery, and an interception. So it was good to see them bounce back a little bit last week. The Broncos, on the other hand, finally had a decent offensive week against Washington. But can they do it again? Can they do it 2 weeks in a row? We're going to bet not. We're going to put Miami's defense up here.
Yeah. Yep. Then we're going to have Baltimore playing the Indianapolis Colts. And honestly, this is going to be purely dependent on if Anthony Richardson plays or not. And we would assume at the point that we're releasing this video, he's going to be a game time decision. And if Anthony Richardson plays, I think there's a lot of elements of this matchup that are gonna change. And if Anthony Richardson does play, there's going to be a higher ceiling, a higher chance for the Colts to score more points, which is going to be a knock on Baltimore's defense. But regardless, at this point in these rankings, once you get to the 8 to 12 range, it doesn't really matter that much, and you just want to go with upside and with ceiling. I'm assuming the Colts are playing the long game at this point. They're not contending. They're not really playing for a playoff spot. If they have to sit AR for a week, I'm fine with that. If they just want to keep them safe, they've got an okay backup in Gardner Minshew, but that means they're probably going to run the ball a lot with Zach Moss, and they're going to pass it a decent amount with Minshew, and he's just not as talented. So I think ultimately, and when you look at what Baltimore has done against the run game over the past 2 weeks, they've held Mixon to 13 points on a lot of opportunity, and they held Dameon Pierce to 6 points.
Yes.
They have a very good run defense.
Yeah. Drop down to the D tier here. We're going to have the banged up Philadelphia Eagles defense. Obviously, if they're at full health and if they are anything close to what we saw last year, And with the talent they have, they should be higher than this. They're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which at the beginning of the year, if you would have asked us this 2 weeks ago, we would have put them probably in the S tier, like blindly. But because they've had such a rough start to the season, they've allowed over 750 yards. Could this happen again against Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Rachaad White? I mean, the play here, and the reason they're on this list is going to be to bank on Baker turnovers. Now, Baker has thrown 0 interceptions throughout the first 2 weeks. So Baker's not really produced those turnovers like we thought he would. However, Tampa Bay does have 4 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, and an interception, and a touchdown this year. So they could force some mistakes. One of those games was against the Bears, though. So how consistent is that going to be? We'll see. That said, Philadelphia Eagles,
they're respectable enough to always have on these rankings, regardless of who they play and regardless of the situation. And honestly, I don't even care if half their guys are out injured. I'm still going to give them the respect they deserve because they still scored 10 points last week against the Vikings offense, who put up like 28 points against them.
Yeah.
So at the end of this tier here is going to be Pittsburgh playing the Las Vegas Raiders. And I think at this point we know what the Vegas Raiders are. They're going to be a low-scoring team pretty consistently, and Jimmy G is what Jimmy G is. But if Devontae Adams doesn't play, that's even better for Pittsburgh. You can move him up these rankings. If that happens, we would assume Devontae Adams will be a game-time decision as well with that dirty hit, with that concussion that he suffered. TJ Watt's going to have a chance to mess somebody's up.
that is
Faux show.
very true.
And Jacoby Myers already out with a concussion as well. So, I mean, you're looking at Josh Jacobs being the only viable option there in the run game. At that point, TJ Watt will just take care of business.
And Josh Jacobs was struggling.
And he's struggled big time because he's been pretty much the only consistent viable option there.
All right, here you go, you kicker lovers. Let's go to kickers here and start in the S tier. It's Justin Tucker. You know him, best kicker in the league. He's a must start every week. That's the end. A tier.
Yeah. A tier is going to be Brandon Aubrey. And this is a guy that we haven't had in our rankings yet, but I think we've got to give credit where credit's due. He had a decent amount of points last. I think he finished as the kicker 1 overall last week. Yeah, with 18 points. Incredible feat. I mean, as long as Dallas's defense is playing the way they are and getting the ball into the hands of that offense and Dak Prescott, I don't care. I don't care. Brandon Aubrey's going to be up here. And he'll remain up here. I mean, even week 1, when he didn't have that great of a week, he still had 9 points because he was kicking so many extra points. Like, this is crazy. So Harrison Butker is going to be in this tier as well. They're playing the Chicago Bears defense. I mean, you could literally expect Mahomes by the end of the third quarter to be benched. Mahomes, but like to sit down because they're up by so much. I mean, that's what I'm expecting. That's what I'm predicting. Harrison Butker is going to reap the benefits of that. I mean, they could score a ton of touchdowns. They could score 5 touchdowns and Butker get 5 points and then a field goal and he'd be fine. Like, we're going to have him in A tier here for sure. Tyler Bass also going to be in this tier. The Bills just scored 38 points on a defense that isn't much worse than this Washington group. So I think you're going into this matchup expecting Tyler Bass to have a solid week. And we know what he is. He makes those field goals in rough weather. I mean, you have to as a Buffalo kicker, and he's very, very consistent, very reliable. You're not really counting on him to miss any field goals, get any negative points for you. He's going to do just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move down to the B tier here. I said absolutely. Now I'm noticing when I say that. Crap. All right, B tier.
I knew you would.
Jason Sanders, Miami. The Broncos just let up 35 points to the Commanders, and Miami Dolphins have the highest graded PFF offense through 2 weeks in the entire league. So I think you've got to put the highest graded offense's kicker on this list every week. Evan McPherson, shooter, is going to be here as well. The Rams defense has been playing well, surprisingly, but we're going to bet on the Bengals talent. You could move Shooter down if Burrow doesn't end up playing. We really don't know, but Shooter's going to have plenty of shots if Joe Burrow does play. Daniel Carlson's going to be next he was the number 1 kicker the last 2 seasons. It's not a brilliant offense this year. It's not a very dynamic offense, so he's gonna get field goals. I mean, they're not gonna be super good in the red zone. You've seen what Jimmy G is. They're gonna get plenty of field goals. And Jake Moody for the 49ers, again, one of the better offenses in the NFL, playing the Giants. The Giants have allowed 68 points so far this year. Niners are gonna score. Moody's gonna score.
In the C tier, we're gonna have Younghoe Koo playing Detroit this week, and I think they're probably gonna struggle against Bijan. I mean, you saw Green Bay heading up their nice defensive performance in week 1, going into week 2 against the Falcons, and Bijan totally destroying them, tearing them up, and pretty much single-handedly winning them that game. Atlanta's going to score some points. You can count on it. Younghoe Koo had a great week, even in week 2. I think he finished as a top 5 kicker. We're expecting that he has a ceiling to do that again this week. Jake Elliott, playing on Philly, a high-scoring offense, what more can you say? I mean, as long as you're playing on a high-scoring offense, you have a good chance to do really well. You got to trust Sirianni and the boys on this one. And honestly, if the Eagles continue to struggle to get the ball in the end zone consistently, you can at least count on them to get it past midfield and to be in field goal range, even if they still have some offensive woes.
Yeah.
So we'll drop down to the D tier here.
Yep. We got Dicker the kicker and Greg Joseph. We're going to pair these guys together because they are playing in a game where the Los Angeles Chargers and Brandon Staley will be on the field. And so because of that, this will be a shootout, high-scoring game, and you're going to take both kickers from these teams respectively. I mean, pretty much any team that plays the Chargers and the Chargers kicker going to be valuable.
Pretty
every
much.
week.
Pretty
All
much.
right. Those are your, man, that's a grind to get through. Defense and kickers, but you keep asking for them. Make sure you drop a like on the video because you guys keep liking these videos, and we can't stop doing them if you guys keep liking them. So make sure you subscribe as well. We wouldn't stop doing them. We are for the people. We understand that. FlockFantasy.com/domain. Get 30% off the entire site if you use code domain and you get placed in our community. Head over there if you want to join us. Appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you later.